When my daughter told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just smiled, picked up my phone, and made one call. They thought the old contractor was finished, broken. They were about to find out that I don't just build foundations, I demolish them too. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this crazy world. My name is Robert, and this is the story of how my dream home became a battleground. The smell of sawdust always felt like home, pine needles and fresh varnish. It was the scent of 50 years of work, 50 years building homes for other families. My hands are rough, calloused. They know the weight of timber, the precise whisper of a level. I was a good contractor, known for sturdy frames and an honest handshake, but for the last 2 years my hands hadn't built for others. They built for her, for Mary. Mary passed 2 years ago. Cancer took her. Slowly, then all at once. The hospital room was sterile, cold. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic beep of the machines. It was a sound that still haunts my sleep. "A place by the lake, Robert," she whispered. Her voice was thin as paper. Her hand felt frail in mine. Big enough for the whole family. For the grandchildren. We didn't have grandchildren yet, but it was her dream. Our dream. I held her hand until the end. And then I started building. I had to. It was the only way to keep the silence from swallowing me whole. I called it the villa. Maybe a bit grand for a retired builder, but it felt right. It was beautiful. A massive stone fireplace reached the vaulted ceiling. Wide windows looked over the still, dark water. The kitchen was the heart of it. Mary would have adored it. Enough counter space to roll out 100 Christmas cookies. It was my masterpiece. My grief poured into every nail, every beam. It was my sanctuary. And it was a secret. Especially from my daughter, Jessica. I had a feeling about Jessica, a cold knot in my stomach, that told me to wait. I should have paid closer attention to that feeling, much earlier. Since Mary died, something in Jessica hardened, or maybe the grief just stripped away the veneer, revealing the cold steel underneath. She started visiting more often. Her husband, Mark, always came with her. Mark sold real estate. He wore shoes that cost more than my monthly utility bill. He had a smile that never quite reached his eyes, a shark's smile. Their visits didn't feel like comfort. They felt like inspections. One Tuesday, they arrived unannounced. I was in the kitchen of my old house on Elm Street, the house Mary and I shared for 40 years. Jessica walked in. Her heels clicked sharply on the linoleum. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how I was. She just stood there, tapping her manicured fingernails on the counter I installed in 1985. Tap, tap, tap. She eyed a small water stain on the ceiling. "Dad, this old house is really becoming too much for you," she said. Her voice was slow, condescending. "The upkeep, the taxes, it's a burden, a burden." The word stung. This house held my life. I stirred my coffee. The spoon clinked against the mug. "I can handle it, Jess." I loved this house. It held echoes of Mary's laughter. Scraped knees, birthday parties. It was home. But they didn't see a home. They saw a liability. Or worse, an opportunity. And they were circling closer every day. Mark chimed in. His voice was slick, oily, that practiced tone he used when trying to convince someone to sell below market value. He adjusted his expensive watch, a nervous tick I had noticed. He always did it when he was lying. "Robert, we are just thinking of your well-being," he said, flashing that too white smile. "A nice condo in the city would be safer. Easier." Then came the phrase, the one I hated. "And importantly," Mark continued, leaning in, "it would allow you to free up some capital." Free up capital, code for give us your money. They had debts. I knew that much. Mark liked expensive cars that broke down constantly. Jessica liked expensive vacations that always required a loan from me shortly after they returned. They saw my retirement savings and my paid-off house, not as my security. They saw it as their emergency fund. They thought I was just an old man waiting to be cashed out. They thought I was weak. What they didn't know was that I was far from broke. I sold my share of the construction business years ago. My old partner, Tom, gave me good advice. Invest wisely. Diversify. I listened. They didn't know about the investments. They didn't know the villa was already paid for. Built on land I bought for a song decades ago, when the lakeside was considered too remote. They knew nothing about my real life, and I intended to keep it that way, at least until I saw their true colors. And those colors were starting to bleed through, fast. The tension grew thicker every month, heavy, suffocating. They treated me like a senile child, incapable of managing my own life, questioning my decisions, my memory, my spending. "Dad, did you really need a new toaster?" Jessica asked one afternoon, holding the receipt like evidence. "The old one caught fire, Jess," I said, tired. "Are you sure you remember that right?" Mark asked, his eyes narrow. His watch ticked nervously. It was subtle, insidious. They were planting seeds of doubt, not just in others, but in me. They were trying to make me believe I was losing my grip. They didn't want me. They wanted what I had. The realization was a bitter pill. It lodged permanently in my throat. But the real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. The pressure escalated a few weeks later. Jessica showed up with brochures, glossy pictures of retirement communities, smiling seniors playing shuffleboard. "Dad, we found the perfect place," she said, spreading them on the coffee table. "They have activities, nurses on staff. It's safe. I'm not ready for a home, Jessica." My voice was firm. "It's not a home. It's assisted living," she corrected sharply. "And frankly, Dad, your grief is overwhelming you. You need help." Her words were a weapon, and she knew exactly how to use them. She introduced me to Dr. Alistair Reed, a grief counselor. "He specializes in elderly patients, Dad," Jessica said, driving me to the appointment. "He can help you process Mom's death, help you move forward." Move forward meant selling the house, moving into a box, letting them take control. I didn't trust him, and I was right not to. Dr. Reed was a soft-spoken man. Thinning hair, cold hands. He asked me questions about my memory, my sleep patterns, my daily routine. "Do you often forget names, Robert? Do you find yourself confused about the day of the week?" It didn't feel like counseling. It felt like an evaluation, an interrogation. I went to 3 sessions. Each one felt more invasive than the last. I knew Dr. Reed wasn't there to help me. He was there to help Jessica, to give her the ammunition she needed. My suspicion was confirmed after the 3rd session. I left my jacket in his office. I walked back to retrieve it. The door was slightly ajar. I heard voices, Dr. Reed and Jessica. I stopped. I listened. "He's stubborn, Doctor," Jessica was saying, her voice tight with frustration. "He refuses to admit he's struggling." "Grief can manifest as denial, Jessica," Dr. Reed replied, his tone soothing. "But the signs are there. The forgetfulness, the isolation, the obsessive focus on the past. He's showing early signs of cognitive decline. Lies. All lies." "So you think we have a case?" Jessica asked. "For conservatorship?" Conservatorship? The word hit me like a punch to the gut. They wanted to take control of my life, my finances, everything. They wanted to make me a prisoner in my own mind. I backed away from the door. My heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't grieving obsessively. I was building the villa. They didn't know that. They just saw an old man rattling around an empty house. They were weaponizing my grief, twisting it into something ugly, something they could use against me in court. I realized then how dangerous they truly were. They weren't just greedy. They were ruthless. They wouldn't stop until they had everything. And they were closer than I thought. It was December, 4 days before Christmas Eve. The tension in my life was reaching a breaking point. I was at the villa, putting the final loving coat of varnish on the oak staircase. The wood gleamed under the afternoon light. It was perfect. Mary would have loved the way the light hit the grain. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on a rag. Sticky residue stuck to my jeans. I pulled out the phone and looked at the screen. A text from Jessica. My stomach tightened. What now? Another doctor's appointment. Another brochure. The message was short, cold, efficient, and it was worse than I imagined. "Dad, Mark and I have decided we need a quiet Christmas this year. His parents have invited us to their ski lodge up north. We want to have a peaceful Christmas with our in-laws. It's just less stress for everyone. We'll stop by after New Year's. Peaceful, less stress. The words were a knife to the heart. I read the words over and over. The screen blurred. They were excluding me from Christmas. My own daughter, they were abandoning me. Assuming I'd be alone, eating a microwave dinner. Feeling sorry for myself. The pain was sharp, a physical ache in my chest. It stole my breath. I leaned against the railing, the varnish still tacky, under my hand. Mary would have been heartbroken. Christmas was her favorite time of year. Our house was always the center of the celebration. The thought of our family splintering like this, it would have destroyed her. And suddenly, it almost destroyed me. The loneliness was crushing. The betrayal was suffocating. They thought they had won. They thought I was broken. Defeated, I took a deep breath. The smell of varnish filled my lungs. I looked around the villa, the beautiful home I built with my own 2 hands. A testament to my life. My love for Mary, my competence. I wasn't a frail old man. I wasn't senile. I wasn't going to let them take everything I had worked for. I wasn't going to let them erase me. The pain crystallized into something else. Something cold, clear, and resolute. They wanted to play games. Fine. But they were about to learn I play for keeps. I typed a reply. My fingers were steady. Hear yourselves. I hit send. The message delivered. A tiny digital confirmation of a massive emotional shift. I wasn't going to chase her love anymore. I was done being their victim. It was time to change the narrative. It was time to fight back. I scrolled through my contacts. I stopped at my son's name, David. David was the opposite of Jessica. He worked hard as a mechanic. His hands were always stained with grease. His heart was always open. He respected me. He missed his mother just as much as I did. But his grief was clean, untainted by greed. I hit the call button. David, it's Dad. Hey, Dad, what's up? His voice was warm, immediate. Are you and Sarah free for Christmas Eve? We are, Dad, he said. We were going to come over to your place around 6. Remember, Sarah's making the lasagna. A slow smile spread across my face. The first real smile of the day. Change of plans, David. Oh? Where are we going? I have a new address for you. I gave him the directions to the villa. He was confused, but he trusted me. Okay, Dad, we'll be there. The first piece of my plan was in motion, but I was just getting started. I didn't stop with David. I invited everyone who mattered, the people who formed the scaffolding of my life, the ones who supported me when the foundation crumbled after Mary died. I called Tom, my old business partner. Tom, Robert, you and Linda busy Christmas Eve? Just waiting for the grandkids to tear the house apart, Tom chuckled. Why? I want to show you my new project. Then I called Helen, my neighbor. She used to bake cookies with Mary every December. She checked on me daily after Mary passed. Brought me casseroles I didn't have the heart to eat. Helen, it's Robert. I'm hosting Christmas this year. Can you make it? She sounded surprised, thrilled. Oh, Robert, I'd love to. What can I bring? Just yourself. It was time to reveal the villa. It was time to show everyone, including myself, that I was far from finished. Christmas Eve arrived. The air was crisp and cold. Snow started falling softly in the afternoon. A perfect Christmas card scene. I spent the day cooking. A massive turkey, stuffing, potatoes, the way Mary used to. The house smelled like herbs and butter, like love. The villa, which had been a quiet sanctuary of my grief, was ready to come alive. David and Sarah were the first to arrive. Their old truck crunched on the gravel driveway. They stepped out, looking confused. They stared at the house, the vaulted entrance, the stone facade. Dad? David called out, walking towards the porch. Is this the right place? This looks like a mansion. I opened the door. Warm light spilled out into the twilight. Merry Christmas, son. I stepped inside. The villa was alive with music. The rich aroma of roasting turkey and lasagna filled the air. A massive tree stood in the corner, one I had cut down myself. Its lights twinkled like captured stars. David looked around the great room. His eyes were wide with astonishment. He ran a hand over the smooth, cool surface of the granite kitchen island. "This place," he whispered. "It's incredible. When did you do this?" "How?" "Been working on it slowly," I said, handing him a glass of eggnog. "Thick and spicy. A retirement project. Kept me busy. Kept me sane. More like, kept me fighting." Sarah hugged me tight. Her eyes were misting over. "Robert, it's the most beautiful home I've ever seen." She looked at the fireplace. "Mary would have absolutely loved it. It feels like her." That was the best compliment I could have received. For the first time in 2 years, it felt like Mary was there, smiling. Tom and Linda arrived next. Tom just stood in the entryway, looking up at the exposed beams. He whistled low. "Robert, you old dog," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You still got it. This is craftsmanship." Helen arrived, her arms full of homemade pies, the house filled with laughter, stories, warmth. We ate, we drank. It was the family Christmas I had dreamed of, the one Mary had wanted, but beneath the joy a current of anticipation hummed. A silent tension. I knew the night wasn't over. The real show hadn't started yet. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. Around 9 p.m., the conversation lulled slightly. We were sitting around the fireplace. The fire crackled, warm and comforting. I caught David's eye. I nodded slightly towards his pocket. "It was time. David," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're always taking pictures on that fancy phone of yours." "Yeah, Dad, it's got a great camera. Why don't you document the party? The house. It's the first Christmas here, after all." David grinned. He understood the unspoken request. He knew exactly what I was doing. We hadn't discussed it, but he knew. He was my son. "Sure thing, Dad. Great idea." He took dozens of photos. The massive fireplace with the stockings hung neatly in a row. The dinner table overflowing with food and wine. Me, laughing with Tom by the towering Christmas tree, looking healthier and happier than I had in years. And the stunning view of the snow falling softly over the dark, still lake. He captured the joy, the peace, everything Jessica had tried to deny me, everything they thought I was incapable of. And then he posted them online, on his social media page, the one I knew Jessica checked religiously, obsessively, comparing her life to others, her perfect, curated life, at the ski lodge. He captioned it, "Best Christmas ever, at Dad's new place." The villa is amazing, a masterpiece of construction. The bait was set. Now we waited for the explosion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The celebration continued, but we were all listening for the inevitable fallout. The explosion we all knew was coming. It didn't take long. An hour later, David's phone rang. The sound was sharp, jarring in the quiet room. He pulled it out of his pocket, looked at the screen, showed it to me. "Jessica." A collective breath was held. Tom raised an eyebrow. David looked at me, asking for permission. I nodded, put her on speaker. He answered, holding the phone out in the center of the table. "Merry Christmas, Jess." His voice was cheerful, maybe a little too cheerful. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Where are you?" Her voice was shrill, cutting through the warmth of the room. The sound of entitlement challenged. "I'm at Dad's new house," David said calmly. "It's by the lake. You wouldn't believe it, Jess. It's amazing." "What new house?" The anger was barely contained now. The confusion warring with rage. "Dad lives on Elm Street. He can't afford a lake house." "What kind of game are you playing, David?" She still thought I was broke. Weak, controlled. "Well, he built this one," David said, taking a sip of his wine. "And it's spectacular. You should see the kitchen. It's got one of those massive islands you always wanted. A low blow, but deserved." There was a long, stunned silence. I could picture Jessica, staring at the photos, her face pale with shock, then flushed with anger, the expensive ski clothes suddenly feeling tight. She wasn't just realizing I had a new house. She was realizing I had wealth she didn't know about, assets she couldn't control, a life she wasn't part of. "This is ridiculous," she spat. The venom dripped from her words. "He's hiding assets. He's confused." She latched onto the narrative they had been building with Dr. Reed. He's clearly not thinking straight. Then I heard Mark's voice in the background, muffled but furious. Mark says, Jessica started. I interrupted. I stepped closer to the phone. My voice was firm, the voice of a man in control. Mark says what? I asked. Merry Christmas, Jessica. Silence. Shock. Dad. Her voice trembled. How could you do this? How could you lie to me? Your own daughter. The audacity. The sheer, unbelievable audacity. I didn't lie, I said. My voice was steady, unwavering. I just didn't tell you. There's a difference. It's my life, Jessica. My money. My house. I looked around the room, at David, Sarah, Tom, Helen, my family, and I chose to spend it with people who actually care about me. I added, We are coming over, she said. The threat was clear and cold. We are coming over right now. Don't you dare go anywhere. The line went dead. She hung up. The party was over. The war had begun. The party went quiet. The warmth of the evening evaporated, replaced by a cold dread. Tom looked at me. His expression was grave. Robert, that girl is trouble, and Mark is worse. He sounds like a cornered rat. I know. Maybe I should stay, Tom offered, until they get here. I don't like the sound of this. I appreciated the offer, but this was my fight. No, Tom, I said. I felt a sudden exhaustion deep in my bones, the weight of the night settling on me. It's late. You all should go home. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas Eve. I looked at David and Sarah. This is family business. David and Sarah will stay. We said our goodbyes. The hugs were tighter. The farewells more somber. The warmth slowly seeped out of the house as the guests departed. The villa was silent again, but this time the silence was heavy, anxious. David, Sarah, and I cleaned up the kitchen. The scraping of plates, the clinking of glasses, the only sounds in the massive house. Dad, what are they going to do? David asked. He was scrubbing a pot with unnecessary vigor. His knuckles were white. Mark sounded furious. They are going to demand their share, I said, drying a wineglass. The crystal felt fragile in my hands. They are going to try and take control. They feel entitled to everything I have. We waited. The drive from the ski lodge was about 2 hours. Maybe less if Mark was speeding, which he undoubtedly was. We sat in the living room. The lights of the Christmas tree blurred in front of my eyes. I felt sick to my stomach. This beautiful home, my sanctuary. It was now a battleground. Around midnight, the witching hour of Christmas morning. Headlights swept across the living room windows, harsh and bright, blinding. A car door slammed, hard, then another. They were here. I walked to the front door. I opened it before they could knock. I wanted them to see I wasn't afraid. I wasn't hiding. Jessica and Mark stood on the porch, still in their expensive, brightly colored ski clothes, red and blue, looking utterly out of place in the quiet dignity of the night. Snowflakes were melting in Jessica's hair. Dad, she started. Her voice trembled with rage. But Mark stepped in front of her, taking control, as he always did. Robert, let's talk sense, Mark said. His voice dripped with fake concern. That patronizing tone I hated. He adjusted his watch. The nervous tick. He was lying. This is a beautiful place, truly. He looked past me, assessing the value, but clearly, building it has put a tremendous strain on you, he continued. You've been secretive, erratic. He paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. Hiding something this big from your family? It's concerning. In fact, Dr. Reed warned us this might happen. He was using the counselor against me. The conservatorship threat was back on the table. I am not erratic, I said. I blocked the doorway, refusing to yield an inch. My feet planted firmly on the floor. I laid myself. I am retired, and this is my home. You are not invited in. They hadn't expected that. They expected me to crumble, to apologize. It's the family's home, Jessica cried. The tears started, whether they were tears of sadness or frustration. I couldn't tell. Mom would have wanted us to share it. using Mary's memory as a weapon. A new low. How much is it worth? Jessica demanded, her voice rising. 2 million? 3? You can't just hoard that kind of wealth. The mask was off. The greed was naked. Unashamed. That's none of your business, David said. He stepped up behind me, a protective presence at my back. My son, Mark, glared at David. His lip curled in disgust. Stay out of this, you grease monkey. The insult hung in the air, cold and sharp. This is between Robert and his actual heir, Mark finished. David clenched his fists, his knuckles white. I put a hand on his arm, steadying him. This wasn't about a physical fight. It was about standing firm. You need to leave, I said. My voice was low, dangerous. We are not leaving until we get this sorted out, Mark said. He took a step forward. He tried to push past me, physically forcing his way into the house. I didn't budge. I spent 50 years on construction sites, hauling lumber, wrestling with steel beams. I was older, but I was stronger than I looked. I held my ground. You are trespassing. Trespassing. I'm your daughter, Jessica screamed. The sound pierced the night. A desperate, ugly sound. You can't keep me out of my own family's house. You owe me. Owe her. For what? For abandoning me? For trying to have me committed? This house, I said, pointing to the villa, the embodiment of my life's work, is mine. The house on Elm Street is mine. My money is mine. I looked her straight in the eyes. You have shown me nothing but greed and disrespect since your mother died. You have earned nothing. Jessica started crying harder now. The manipulative tears, the ones that used to work. Dad, please, you don't understand. She stepped forward, reaching out a hand. We are in trouble. Mark's business is struggling. We have debts. We need help. The confession, the desperation. We were counting on the inheritance, she whispered. Please, Dad, we're desperate. For a fleeting second, I almost softened. She was my daughter, my blood, the little girl I taught to ride a bike. But then I remembered the text message. Peaceful, less stress. I remembered Dr. Reed's office. Conservatorship. I remembered their cold dismissal when they thought I had nothing left to give. My heart hardened. You should have worked harder, I said. My voice was cold, devoid of the sympathy she expected. You should have lived within your means. Your desperation is not my responsibility. Mark realized the sympathy angle was a failure. He switched tactics instantly. His face hardened, the mask of concern replaced by a sneer of contempt. Fine, Robert. If you want to be stubborn, we can do this the hard way. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. We'll have you declared incompetent, he threatened. Dr. Reed is ready to testify. You're delusional. A judge will see that. The threat hit me like a physical blow. Incompetent. Taking away my freedom, my dignity, my life. It scared me. They had a plan. They had a witness. Get off my property, I said. I tried to keep the sudden fear out of my voice. You're making a big mistake, old man, Mark snarled. He grabbed Jessica's arm, pulling her roughly. Come on, we're leaving. He turned back one last time. But this isn't over. They walked back to their expensive car, tires spinning on the gravel driveway, spewing stones as they sped away. The red taillights disappeared into the darkness. I closed the door. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. David and Sarah were watching me, their faces pale with shock. Are they gone? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. For now, I said, but I didn't believe it. The look in Mark's eyes wasn't one of defeat. It was one of calculating rage. He wasn't done, not by a long shot. Dad, we can't just wait for them to strike again, David said, pacing the floor. That threat about incompetence, Dr. Reed. They have a plan. We need to fight back. How? They have a doctor willing to lie for them. We need to find out what they're hiding, David said, stopping suddenly. Mark is desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. We need leverage. We need a private investigator. It felt extreme, like something out of a movie. But this whole situation was extreme. My daughter was trying to steal my life. The next morning, Christmas morning, I made the call. Sarah knew someone. A woman named Sarah Jenkins. Sharp, efficient, discreet. Mr. Gable, tell me what you need, Jenkins said, her voice crisp over the phone. I need to know everything about my son-in-law, Mark. I said, his finances, his business, his debts. And I need information on a Dr. Alistair Reed. Consider it done, Jenkins replied. I'll have preliminary findings in 48 hours. The clock was ticking. The next 2 days were agonizing. I felt jumpy, paranoid. I kept the doors locked, the curtains drawn. The villa felt less like a sanctuary and more like a fortress under siege. 2 days after Christmas, I noticed a car parked down the road, a dark sedan. It was there in the morning. It was there in the afternoon. It wasn't a neighbor. I walked down the driveway, trying to look casual. A man was sitting in the driver's seat. Sunglasses. Baseball cap pulled low. He looked rough. Dangerous. He noticed me and quickly started the engine, driving away. My blood ran cold. Were Mark and Jessica watching me? Or was it something else? Something worse. Sarah Jenkins called that evening. Mr. Gable, we have the findings, she said. Her voice was grim. It's complicated. Tell me. First, Dr. Reed. He has a history of questionable evaluations. Several complaints filed with the medical board, and we found significant payments from Mark's company to Dr. Reed over the last 3 months. Your instincts were correct. He was bought. Relief washed over me. We could fight the conservatorship. But Jenkins wasn't finished. Mark's business isn't just struggling. It's collapsing. He's leveraged to the hilt. He owes money all over town, and not just to banks. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He borrowed money from some very dangerous people, Jenkins said. Loan sharks. One in particular. A man named Liam Boyle. Liam Boyle, I repeated. The name felt heavy. Ominous. I sent you a photo, Jenkins continued. He's bad news. Aggressive. He doesn't wait for court orders to collect. He uses intimidation. Violence. As I opened the email, the photo loaded. It was the man in the sedan. The man watching my house. Liam Boyle. The realization hit me like a ton bricks. Mark wasn't just greedy. He was terrified. He needed my money, not just to maintain his lifestyle, but to save his own skin. And Liam Boyle knew where I lived. He knew about the villa. Mark must have told him about the inheritance he was expecting. He must have promised Boyle the money. The danger suddenly became very real. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't just about the conservatorship. It was about survival. They are going to come back, aren't they? I asked Jenkins. Boyle is putting immense pressure on Mark, she said. Mark is desperate. He has nowhere else to turn. Yes, Mr. Gable, I believe they will try something drastic. Be careful. I hung up the phone. The house felt cold. I looked at the fireplace. The fire was dying down. I wasn't going to wait for them to make their move. I had to protect my home, my family. I called David. I need you and Sarah to come back to the villa. Tonight. It's serious. They arrived an hour later. I told them everything. About Dr. Reed. About Liam Boyle. About the man in the sedan. The fear in Sarah's eyes was palpable. David's face was grim. They won't get away with this, Dad, David said, his voice tight with anger. We secured the house, checked the locks, turned on the security lights. We were as ready as we could be. We decided to take shifts watching the house. I took the first shift. I sat in the armchair facing the drive. A heavy steel wrench rested on the table beside me. I felt like a soldier guarding a fortress. Around 2 a.m., the exhaustion was pulling me under. The house was silent, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. The snow was falling heavily outside. Then I heard a noise, not from the driveway, from the back of the house, the lakeside. I stood up. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I grabbed the wrench. I walked quietly through the dark kidder, to the back patio doors. I looked out into the darkness. There, illuminated by the moonlight reflecting off the frozen lake, 2 figures, Jessica and Mark. They weren't knocking this time. They were trying to force open one of the large windows in my study. They weren't just confronting men anymore. They were breaking in. I couldn't believe it. The sheer audacity, the naked desperation. My own daughter, breaking into my home, driven by her husband's debts, driven by greed. I didn't shout. I didn't rush out. I just watched them, paralyzed by the depth of their betrayal. Mark had a crowbar. He was jamming it into the window frame. The sound of wood splintering echoed in the quiet night. A violence against the home I built. A physical assault against me, against Mary's memory. This was no longer a family argument. It was a crime. It was a crime. I backed away from the door, my movements slow, deliberate. I went to the guest room where David and Sarah were sleeping. "David," I whispered, shaking his shoulder. He was instantly awake. "What is it? Are they back?" "They're in the back. They have a crowbar. They're breaking in." David was out of bed in a second. The adrenaline surged. "I'm calling 911. He grabbed his phone and dialed. He explained the situation to the operator. His voice low, urgent. Intruders, family members, breaking and entering. The operator said the police were on their way, but the snow was heavy. The roads were difficult. The lakeside was remote. "They said it could be 20 minutes, David whispered, hanging up the phone. 20 minutes felt like a lifetime. We heard a loud crack, the sound of the window frame finally giving way. Then, a shattering crash. Glass. They were inside. "Dad, we need to hide," Sarah whispered. She was pulling me toward the pantry, her eyes wide with fear. Hide? In my own house? The fear was replaced by a cold, burning fury. A rage I hadn't felt in decades. "This is my house," I said. My voice was low but firm. "I built this house. I will not hide in it." I walked into the hallway. I could hear them in my study, drawers opening, papers rustling, the sound of frantic searching. "What are they looking for?" David asked, close behind. He had grabbed a fireplace poker. "The deed," I said. "The will, bank statements. Anything they can use to get the money, to pay off Boyle." I walked towards the study door. I didn't hesitate. I threw it open. The lights were on. Jessica and Mark froze. They were standing by my desk, holding a stack of financial documents I had left out. The cold wind was blowing through the shattered window, swirling snow into the room. Glass covered the hardwood floor. "Put those down," I said. My voice boomed in the small room, the voice of a man used to commanding a construction site. Jessica gasped, dropped the papers. Mark didn't retreat. Instead, he raised the crowbar, holding it like a weapon. "Stay back, Robert," he threatened. His eyes were wild, desperate. He was shaking. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want what's fair." He blurted out the truth. "Boyle is going to kill me, Robert." "I need the money." He admitted it. The fear was naked on his face. The fear of Liam Boyle was stronger than his fear of me. "You broke into my house," I said, looking not at Mark, but at Jessica. "My daughter. Your mother would be so ashamed," I added. Jessica looked terrified. "Dad, please," she begged. "He's dangerous. Mark is in trouble. We just needed the papers. We didn't mean for this to happen. Lies." She always looked down when she lied. "You talk with words, not crowbars," David said, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "Where is the deed, Robert?" Mark demanded. He stepped closer, the crowbar raised menacingly. "We know this place is worth millions, and we deserve our share. We won't be cut out. You deserve nothing," I said. The words laced with the bitterness of a lifetime of disappointment. "I worked my whole life for this. I built. You tried to control me. You excluded me. And now you are trying to rob me. It's not robbing when it's family." Jessica cried, the entitlement blinding her to the reality of her actions. "It is when you break a window to do it," I replied. Suddenly, Mark lunged. Not at me, but at David. He swung the crowbar wildly. A vicious, brutal swing, aimed at David's head. David ducked just in time. The crowbar slammed into the wall, cracking the drywall, leaving a gaping hole. Sarah screamed. I didn't think. I reacted on pure instinct. Primal rage. I tackled Mark with all my strength. We both went down hard on the floor, rolling over the broken glass, the air knocked out of my lungs. He was younger than me, stronger in theory, but I was fueled by adrenaline, by fury. I fought to protect my son, my home, my dignity. We struggled, grunting, cursing. "Dad!" David shouted. I saw David grab the crowbar from Mark's hand, wrestled it away. Mark scrambled to his feet, his face bleeding from a cut sustained in the fall. He looked wildly around the room, realizing he was cornered, disarmed, trapped. "You're crazy," he yelled at me, pointing a shaking finger. "You're all crazy. We'll see you in court." And then we heard the sirens, faint at first, then growing louder, closer. Blue and red lights flashed through the broken window, reflecting off the snow, illuminating the chaos in the study. Mark looked at Jessica, panic in his eyes, the realization of what they had done finally hitting him. "We have to go." Now he ran towards the broken window, ready to climb out, to escape into the night. "Don't move," David said, holding the crowbar, his voice cold as steel. Jessica stood frozen, staring at me, her face a mixture of defiance, fear, and something else. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Shame. The police burst into the room, guns drawn, shouting commands. "Drop the weapon. Hands up. Now." An officer, older, calmer, took charge. Officer Miller. David immediately dropped the crowbar. "I'm the homeowner's son," he said, his voice steady. "He's the intruder." He pointed at Mark. Mark was caught halfway out the window, struggling against the jagged glass. Pathetic. Two officers dragged Mark back inside, forcing him to the ground, handcuffing him. He was swearing, fighting, filled with empty threats. Officer Miller approached Jessica. She was crying silently. "Wait," I said, struggling to catch my breath, the adrenaline receding, leaving only a profound ache in my chest. A heartbreak so deep it felt physical. "That's my daughter?" Officer Miller looked at me, then at the shattered window, the broken glass, the crowbar on the floor, the hole in the wall. "Sir," Officer Miller said, his voice patient but firm, "she broke into your house. Is that correct?" I looked at Jessica. She looked so small, so broken. In that moment, I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest. The one Mary adored, but she was also the woman who excluded me from Christmas. The woman who tried to have me declared incompetent. The woman who stood by, complicit, while her husband tried to rob me and assaulted my son. The decision I made now would define the rest of our lives. I had to protect my home, my son, myself. I had to draw a line. "A foundation," Sir Officer Miller asked again. "Did they break and enter?" I took a deep breath. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Yes," I said. "They broke in." Jessica gasped. A sound of utter despair, a choked sob that echoed the breaking of my own heart. They led her out of the room, out of my house, out of my life. The rest of the night was a blur. Flashing lights, statements, photographs. The cold efficiency of the legal system invading my home. An emergency repair company arrived, boarding up the window. The sound of the drill loud in the quiet night, sealing the breach in my fortress. When the sun rose, the villa was quiet again. But it wasn't the peaceful quiet of retirement. It was the silence of loss, heavy and suffocating. David, Sarah and I sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee. "Dad," David said, his voice heavy, "I'm so sorry. I never thought she would go this far." "It's not your fault," I said, staring into the black depths of my coffee. Greed is a poison, and it had poisoned my family. The following weeks were the hardest of my life, harder even than the days immediately following Mary's death. When Mary died, I had grief. Now I had betrayal. The legal process was slow, painful, but the evidence provided by Sarah Jenkins was devastating. Mark, facing the burglary and assault charges, also found himself under investigation for fraud. Liam Boyle was arrested shortly after Mark, thanks to information Jenkins provided to the police. The whole house of cards collapsed. Mark was denied bail. Dr. Reed's credibility was shredded. The payments from Mark were exposed. He faced disciplinary action and lost his license. The conservatorship threat was gone. Jessica was released pending trial. Her life shattered. Her reputation ruined. She called me constantly, leaving voicemails, tearful apologies, furious accusations that I had ruined her life. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The wound was too deep. My lawyer advised me to change my will, to protect my assets from any future claims. And I did. The villa, the old house, the investments, everything was left to David, with a significant portion donated to the cancer charity that helped Mary in her final days. Jessica got nothing. The inheritance she coveted so desperately, the one she was willing to break into my home for, it was gone. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. Mark pleaded guilty. He got 5 years. Jessica also pleaded guilty to trespassing and vandalism. She avoided jail time, probation, mandatory community service. I was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I needed the closure. I needed to see it end. I looked at Jessica one last time. She looked thin, pale, defeated. The fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by a hollow emptiness. She looked at me, her eyes begging for forgiveness. I wasn't ready to give. Maybe never. It was too late. The trust was broken. The family was shattered. I sold the old house on Elm Street. The memories were too painful now, tainted by the inspections, the greed. I moved into the villa permanently. David and Sarah visited often. We tried to create new memories, new traditions, to fill the silence with laughter, but the shadow of that night lingered. A ghost that haunted the corners of the villa, a reminder of the high cost of peace. A year passed. The seasons changed. The lake froze and thawed, and froze again. It was Christmas Eve again. The villa was decorated, the fireplace roaring, the hole in the study wall was repaired, the window replaced, but the scars remained. David and Sarah were there. They had a baby now, my grandson, Michael. I held him in my arms, looking at his innocent face, a face untainted by greed or betrayal. He was the future, the true meaning of family, the legacy that truly mattered. Mary's legacy. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood by the window in my study, the window that had been shattered. The glass was smooth and clear now. I looked out at the frozen lake, the moonlight shining on the pristine snow. I thought about Jessica. I hadn't seen her since the trial. I heard through Tom that she and Mark divorced. She was living in a small apartment in the city, working as a waitress, trying to rebuild her life from the wreckage. A tear rolled down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of acceptance. I had built my dream home. I had protected my legacy, but I had lost my daughter. Sometimes, building something new means tearing something old down. Sometimes, protecting your sanctuary means closing the door on those who try to break it. I wiped the tear away. I looked at the photo of Mary on my desk. She was smiling. "We did it, Mary," I whispered. "The house is safe. We're safe." I turned off the light and walked out of the room, leaving the past in the darkness and embracing the quiet, hard-earned, bittersweet peace of the present. Thanks for listening. If this story touched you, please rate it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Your support means the world because your time matters.